Karina, we are going to tell you about our update process to the latest technologies in our products. Last year, our team decided to transform our product K2B to the latest technologies that we use. To all the technologies we use, I would say Genexus, query for responsive, and K2B tools, which is quite large KB. It has 16,000 objects and 700 tables. Our objectives were technological update, and also our user experience was completely renewed, and we wanted to do everything together. So it was a big challenge that we undertook last year. K2B is a system that automates the management of the organizations, and it has all those functionalities we see there distributed in various modules that interconnect through services and with the applications of the ecosystems of the organization. So to sum up, it's a platform. And I'm going to share with you, together with Karina, some of the things we did, what we learned in the process. So firstly, we wanted a technological update, and also we wanted to create the mechanism and the skills in our team to be always there, to have state-of-the-art technology and always be at the forefront. If we see how technologies are adopted, we see that there are three levels. The first one would be to adopt the new technology and do the same things in the same way we were doing it before, but with the new technology. This is a first step, and it's all right, but we can go further and go to a second level, which is more interesting. When we adopt a technology, we can do the same things we used to do, but in new ways that the new technology now allows for. And the third level in the adoption of a technology, which is the most interesting one, of course, is to do new things that were not feasible in the past and that are now allowed by the new technology. We are at a moment in history in which it is very important to get to level 3 in order to support with our software the organizations that are going through the digital transformation. It's more important than ever to stay there also. That is why the first objective, as I said, is to transform, but also to have the mechanisms to continue transforming. As my colleague said, it is necessary to have a very agile process to incorporate the new technologies and be able to release all these new technologies with security and stability. Then we were facing this other challenge. We were trying to create a new user experience with our application. And we thought, how should we face these two challenges? We needed to do two things that were going to require a lot of effort, but at the same time, we had to keep our current clients with their current versions and evolve at the same time in the current versions, because all this could not be stopped. So this is a phrase that describes the complexity very well. God created the world in 7 days because he didn't have an installed base. For any of us who create software, there is a lot of complexity. We didn't want to do it in 7 days, but we wanted to do it as quickly as possible. So this is what we did and what we learned. Firstly, we needed to define the strategy to advance. The first strategy we analyzed was this one. We said, let us take all the functionalities of K2B, transform them to the new technology, then turn them into full responsive, and finally create the whole user experience in the product. The advantage of this strategy was that if we were unable to reach the upper level, in the meantime, with the technology or the responsive, we would be able to relieve completely functional versions of each one. The risk was that we might never get to the upper level, which was our final purpose. So we thought of a second strategy. Instead of advancing upwards, we decided to advance towards the right, so to speak. With regard to this second strategy, we decided to define a set of functionalities of K2B that would have a value for our clients and put into these functionalities all of the characteristics of the upper level, a new experience, and make it responsive and put in all of the functionalities. It was a learning curve for us, and the challenge with this strategy was that we needed a very agile process so that once we had the minimum viable product, we would advance in functionalities to give greater scope to the solution. Finally, we decided to adopt the second strategy. And we released the minimum viable product, and now we are in the process of completing the whole functionality. So this is the advanced strategy with regard to the development. We divided the team in three with a bimodal strategy. The first team would design the experience, the second one would be in charge of technological update, and the third one would be in charge of maintenance and evolutions. The first two would work in parallel. Karina and I are now going to tell you more about the design of the experience. For some years we had been studying this matter and doing research, and 3 years ago we attended the event of design of interaction with many Latin American countries. We went there with a colleague and found in the event a great friend who has a lot of experience, and she's called Lucia, and she said, "What are you doing here? You are the only engineers in the whole event." But this is changing now. The worlds of design, as Gaston said, and the world of technology are getting together. We are understanding more of that world, and they're helping us create better experiences. Genexus is also incorporating in the versions and the K2B tools the pattern instruments that we are using so as to better integrate these two worlds. We had in our team a designer, developers, and people expert in functionalities in order to design the experience. The objective was therefore to create a new user experience. Now this is in very general terms, so it's necessary to determine which are the elements we had to redesign and how. What and how. If we decide to create an application, any application, when we interact with it, the first thing we see is how it looks, the colors, the spaces, the icons. That's what is called the visual design. We started interacting with the application, doing tasks inside the application, and we analyzed how it worked, how it replied to our actions. This is what we call the design of the interaction. As we go through the screens of the application, the information requested by the application or shown by the application is structured in various ways. That is what we call architecture of the information. The content shown to us has a certain language and sounds in a certain manner, and that is what is called content design. And finally, at the bottom, we have the functionality that our app provides, which is exposed through the conceptual model design. It contains all of the elements that are exposed so that the user can interact with it, objects and actions. If I think of a Spotify application, for example, I know that the objects are the songs, the singers, and the actions would be to share a list, to follow an artist, to listen to a song. This conceptual model is important because it's one of the keys of the user experience, and sometimes it's something, and sometimes we forget it. So these layers are part of the user experience. If these layers are correctly built, the user experience will be good. And in this case too, as in many other things, the building starts at the bottom. We took the conceptual model of K2B and simplified it as much as we could. I don't know whether it's the case with you, but it happens that developers create generalizations or artificial things in our database that are excellent for the implementation, are a part of our implementation model, but sometimes we expose this to the users, and the user is not familiar with these elements. The user need not learn or understand these elements. We are the ones who have to transform these elements in something that the user can actually handle. So we simplified the conceptual model. We hid those things that appeared in the implementation model, we improved the language, and we worked a lot in information architecture. K2B is a product that has a lot of information, and this was an important element in our work, to see which information the user needed to see and the minimum information that was required for most users. And the rest of the information could be accessed through progressive discovery. That is to say, have access to this information through various lines. So we structured and we established a hierarchy for all of the information contained in the K2B. Then we created new interactions. And we gave a lot of power to surfing between the various elements. And finally, we did the visual design. I can show you some screen. This is the web application of K2B. And we have classified there semantically sales, purchases, purchase orders. And on the other hand, we have the objects, the products, the suppliers, etc. Here we defined the architecture of information, and we said, okay, we are going to organize all this in cards. We are going to have a card with the main information so that it can be easily scanned, and then we'll have cards with more details, and in every business transaction we are going to have the totals, the balances, and some additional information cards that will be collapsed. Then we designed the interaction and said progressive discovery. You see there that you have the minimum information and you can get more into details if you wish. Same thing for the cards. And then another guideline is that all of the information that appears in the interface can be explained with a click. We have here payments in order, and if I click on the data, I can have access to the application. So these are some of the elements that we defined for the interaction. For the objects, we defined a different architecture because we had a lot of information. So we established a hierarchy with a lateral menu. We decided which would be the interaction of the objects. It was possible to serve the various elements of the menu, where the information that you had in the cards was established according to a hierarchy, and the other element was a design of the processes, of the management processes, with this kind of pattern. You have there the management indicators, and not all of them are going to be similar. We are going to define the management indicators, and then underneath there will be graphs with a whom, why, where, to explain the management indicators, and the graphs will allow me to have access to more details. These are three semantic types that we defined, and we worked on their architecture and their interaction. Now, did we do this for all of the objects of the KB? Well, it's impossible because we had 16,000. So we took a sample, and for that kind of semantics I told you about, we took a simple one and a complex one. We worked on 6 or 7 that were representing the functionality of K2B, and with these objects we designed the content, the architecture of information, the interaction, the visual design, and we worked with the user experience team. For this purpose, we made prototypes very quickly. We did not define which was the best idea for days. We had a design thinking process that was very fast. We built prototypes very quickly. We sat in front of the machine and closed and changed the code until we got the result we wanted. So what was the result of this work? A design system. Because we designed the principles we wanted to apply to our user experience, for each semantic type, the patterns, the guides for the design and the interaction that we are going to follow, and the visual design. The good thing is that the design system was not left in a document. We added it to the tools we used. GenXus, the K2B tools, which is the tool that creates the patterns, and which already had a design system, but we gave it more power. And then we decided guides and components for K2B, which is a regional design system, which has all these features adapted to the semantics of the K2B domain. And when we added the tools, once we had defined it, we were able to disseminate it very quickly. A high percentage of the design system was already inside the tools. We also create a site with the design system. This is where we have all the patterns, all the guidelines, or the guides, all the components of all the visual components, and these are the results we obtained. A version that was completely renewed from a technological point of view, with a new user experience, is called K2B Faro. And secondly, we gave a lot of power to the design system Orion, which is part of our K2B tools. And finally, we formalized and published a design system of K2B that has all of the previous components. This is what we wanted to obtain in the long run, but in the process we got other results we did not expect, and Karina will tell you about them. Thank you, Mayda. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here at this 28th event, sharing with you what we do. As Mayda said, we worked a lot in this process in order to update and really improve K2B and build a new experience on top of this product, which is very big and powerful. Along the way, we learned some things that are very valuable, at least from my point of view, and this is what I want to tell you about. When we started this process, we thought that doing a design system was only about saying, well, I'm not going to have a new UI and some documents, some guidelines in order to establish the rules with which you design interactions. In the process, we studied, we tried things, and we learned something else. We obtained something much larger, a K2B digital culture. If we look at the elements that define our culture, the ones on the left, we see that there is a correlation, an amazing correlation, with the components that define our design system. And this is very important for us because it's related not only to how we communicate with our clients, it's related to a culture of the organization and a culture of the K2B platform in which we are. So this is the first thing we learn. But the second thing we learn, which is also very important, is that if we wanted to change the user experience, we had to change the way in which we build software. Sina Bolton, who is the person who built the design system for Amazon, and Salesforce explains this with an example I love and I want to share with you. For those of you who saw the movie The Founder, that tells the story of the creation of McDonald's, well, Michael Keaton is the actor for the salesperson who tries to sell the machine for making juices and shakes, and nobody paid attention to him, but he started dreaming about creating a new experience for McDonald's. The people at McDonald's were very busy, didn't pay attention, but he thought, well, this business has a huge future based on an experience that he defined as making the best possible hamburger and having it ready in 30 seconds. When he convinces the McDonald brothers, we see a scene in the movie which is a tennis court. The McDonald brothers start designing in this tennis court how the kitchen will be in order to arrive at this experience. And they have a layout and they define all of the tasks. But it's important that you see the layout.
Ahí está layout. Bueno.
There it is. So they defined each one of the tasks in the kitchen and the routes for their employees, and they change it again and again and define it and design it again and again until they find the perfect choreography And that's what we did. We had to design and change our kitchen. We had to change the way in which we did software. And for me, this is one of the sub-products, and not so much sub, that we obtained. And when you take a step towards automation, as we did, because this meant building components that had to be assembled later, this step substantially increases productivity. But when you take a step in this direction, then you have to reach a compromise. You have to say, will I lose innovation or flexibility in the design of my interactions? And let me tell you another story. For those of you who like jazz, there's a kind of jazz called improvise jazz, and people get on the stage. It's five musicians that start playing. These musicians have to be excellent in what they do, of course. And they start playing, and they build the best melodies on the stage. And I can't possibly imagine how they can play music for 1 hour, and each musician comes up with a note that is consistent with what the others are playing and harmonious. It's like thinking we're going to have 5 developers making an application, and the 5 of them will be thinking of the same interface. Well, I have a cousin who plays improvised jazz and plays saxophone, and I asked him one day, how is it that you all come up with notes that are consistent with what the others are playing? And he said, there's no magic in this. We work a lot on musical blocks of the highest quality that are easy to assemble with the rest. And when we get on stage, well, that's the best moment, because creativity and innovation happen at that moment, when we create the best possible spectacle by assembling these blocks. And for us it was more or less the same. We did not lose creativity, we did not lose the best show, so to speak, for the interaction. We built it on the basis of these blocks that were of the highest quality and that were the fruit of our work. And the third thing that we learned was that very quickly we realized that this was not something that was ready and closed. It had to evolve, because the design system had to evolve. So we had to work a lot, as Mayda said, on patterns so as to be able to disseminate what we had done. If we look at the literature of the #1 design systems, we find a recurrent problem: dissemination. Imagine changing an icon, a color, a component in an application like K2B with 16 sounded objects. The impact will extend to many objects, and it cannot possibly be done by hand. So dissemination is one of the challenges, and we worked a lot on this, and without any doubt the big player is Genexus 16. Genexus 16 has all the elements nowadays, but we also had to work a lot on our patterns and build a design system, Orion, which allows us to disseminate and is a little more agnostic than Rigel, which is the one of K2B, and which are making available to the community to a certain extent, so as to support you in the process and alleviate the obstacles you may face. So this design system is available. In the Genexus community, it happens very often that we disseminate the changes in the database, and we are used to disseminating the logics of the applications. This GenX 16 that we are putting today on the table has the third element, which is very strong, the capacity of disseminating interactions. And this is it's not a minor thing. With GenX 16, we are giving a very big leap in software construction, and this will have a huge impact on the productivity and the quality of the software we are making. And finally, since I'm out of time,
this allows me, I've been working for 25 years, and we are used to seeing this type of things. That we take an application of 16,000 objects where the logic was fine, you know, the logics, database, and business process. We don't change that. But on top of that, we are going to build a user experience. And this goes on surprising me. We don't have it in our GenX's community. We don't have it elsewhere. We can only show it and see it by doing. So, look here, my invitation is to dare dive into the water, because in this doing road, it's not only as it happened to us, where we find everything that we were looking for, but we have found a higher level, which I think is what we will have here, and that is the challenge of building higher quality applications, that we do it in a more and more efficient manner. This is what we are able to get, what we've learned, and I invite you to take this path with us. Thank you.